Hey friends, welcome to the Angie Ambrosetti Show, Let Her Out to Play. I'm Angie, your host, a teenage mom turned multi-six-figure earner, married to the same man for nearly 40 years. I'm a homeschooling mom of 7 and totally unqualified, at least on paper, but wildly called by God. Remember, He doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Here, we are going to talk about it all. Healing from the hard stuff, building a business with heart, raising a big family, walking in faith, and finally breaking free from the lies that said we weren't enough. So if you're ready to stop playing small, shake off the doubt and the shame, and step fully into who you were created to be, girl, you are in the right place. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Angie Ambrosetti Show. I know. I say this every single time, and this is not recorded. I mean, this is recorded, but like what I'm saying, it's literally authentic to what I say every single time that I interview a new guest on my podcast. Is that I'm really excited about it because if I wasn't, you guys would be thinking, why does she have these people on here if she's not really excited about it? And so my friend Cristina, who is my guest today, she and I met, gosh, I heard her speak I don't know, sometime this past year. We didn't even meet then, but we met a little bit later and we found out we have so many things in common. And so I thought it was appropriate to have her be a guest at this particular time because we both share a lot of things in common. And one of those things is we are both adoptive moms. And November is National Adoption Month. And so I'm going to do my best to pull in some really great interviews of other women who have had the experience, the blessing of being able to bring children into their family via adoption. And to me, that means so much because that is how I view my relationship with the Lord. He adopted me into his chosen family. And I feel the same way about my own children. And I know others feel the same way when they bring children into their family through adoption. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you today to my friend, Cristina Simmons. She is a best selling author of the book, Eat Your Feelings. We're going to tap that in the show notes below. If you don't have it or you haven't heard of it, go grab a copy or 3 because that's what I did so I could share them with a few friends. She is a mom of 3. She's been married to her hunky hubby for 27 years. She is an occupational therapist, which is kind of how we got started in some of our communication through all of this. She's a speaker, she's a coach, and she's a publisher. So, welcome to the show today, my friend Christina. I'm so excited for you to be here.
I'm so excited to be here. I just love any time that I get to talk with you. So,
Well, we've had some really deep, great conversations in just what did we meet in May of this year?
it must have been May because we were at at Amberley Lagos Summit in April, and then we were inside of Jessica Papineau's mastermind. Must have
Yes.
been in May.
Yeah. I knew it was this year, but I just couldn't remember exactly. But it's amazing when I think back to hearing you speak on stage. Because remember, guys, she's a speaker. I heard her speak on stage. I didn't know anything about her. It was the first time I had ever, speakingly been introduced to her. Um, and I thought, I need to know her. Like, at some of the things that you were talking about, I just felt such a connection. You homeschool, um, you were adoptive mom, and I was like, I just really need to get in her space. So I'm super excited for my audience to hear you share today. And I would just like for you to take us back to kind of the beginning of your adoption story, like lead us up to that point and tell us about that beautiful journey.
Yeah, I would love to. I would like to say though that I felt the same way about you and we weren't even in person. We were on because you saw me speak in person, but then when we were in the mastermind, it was on a Zoom like this.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what you said, but I was like so drawn to you. And I'm like, I have to know her. Like, I need to get her number. We need to be in contact. And then we were able to spend a week in Hawaii together. So, anyway, it's just been a beautiful friendship from there. But
Yeah, for sure.
so, my motherhood journey. started a little unorthodox. My husband and I were married when we were 22 and 23, so still babies. I think about my girls are going to be 22 in December, and I think there's no way that they're ready to be married. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. We were so young, we were still babies, but we thought we knew everything, and we wanted to be independent, and we were in love. And so, after just 3 months of dating, we were engaged and married within the year. So, but when we got pregnant with our first child, we found out at 6 months that we carried a very rare gene that made very sick babies. And they never discouraged us from getting pregnant again. Our first daughter was born almost full term, but she only lived 3 days due to multiple complications from the genetic syndrome. And then they told us that it was only a 25% chance that it would happen again. It's a recessive gene. So 75% chance healthy baby, 25% chance unhealthy baby. I'm an ultimate optimist. And so those were great odds. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, there's
Yes.
no way that God would do this to us again. Like just having to bury a child is something that unless you've been through it, you can't even imagine. And especially an infant. I mean, it's a terrible thing to go through. I learned a lot through that, but never thought that it would happen 3 times. And that's exactly how it happened. I also had a miscarriage in between there. So when after our second baby girl passed away due to the syndrome, I started talking to my husband about adoption. And our conversation went a little bit like me saying that God told me that we were supposed to adopt because that's how most of our conversations go. I'm like, God told me this, and he's like, that's not how that works. And I'm like, yes, it is. And so, but one of his concerns was that he couldn't love another person's child. He wasn't sure that he could love someone else's baby, especially when the world of adoption is so unknown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's so many different variables and unknowns. And like our girls' adoption, which was a miracle in itself. I guess I can talk about them a little bit. So I mentioned that I wanted to look into adopting to my husband. That was in, let's see, our second daughter passed away in May. And so probably June, I started talking to him about it. And he said that he wasn't ready to do that. And so I said, okay, well, I'll pray about it. And then um, maybe after the first of the year, we'll look into it. And his cousin actually knew somebody who worked in an OB's office that
Mhm.
in a town like 30 minutes from here that actively had an adoption list, and he adopted babies pretty frequently. And so I did call just to see what the process was. And they said, well, it's going to be the holidays. Why don't you call back after the first of the year? Because we're going to be closed a lot between, Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, that's fine. They actually ended up calling us on Christmas Day that same year that there were twins born and did we want them? And so that we never got on his adoption list. I never got to meet him in person. We never stepped foot into his office. And I always say that we were on God's adoption list because
Yep.
there's no other
Yep.
way that that could have happened besides that. Um, so, and then my husband, obviously, from the very first time that he saw the girls, they are identical twins. He was very hesitant to hold them because they were quite small. They were 4'12" and 4'7" when they were
Mhm.
born, and they were born with cocaine in their system. Um, but the nurse just kind of thrust the one, I think it was Dory, she was the smaller one, just sort of thrust her at him, and he was kind of like this, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, because she was like a little bag of bones.
Right.
Yeah, just so tiny, and their skin was just kind of saggy and sort of hanging off their little bones, and so we had to fatten them up, which we did a good job of. But
Yeah.
so that was our first experience of adoption.
Well, so a couple things are just coming up for me. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's just hitting me now is that I remember myself saying, I don't know if I could love another someone else's child, or actually in my mind, I was thinking I've nursed all of my biological children. And if I can't nurse, how would I have a bond or something, something of that nature? And I didn't realize that there were options for that. But also, so I can connect with what your husband was saying there, like thinking like, how can I love someone else's child? And then the connection of the time frame. So we actually got our first call December 26th.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wait a minute. I know we've talked about that before, but it just hit me today for the first time that our connections were very close in that. And if I try to go back and remember dates, I'll mess it up. So I'm not going to do that because I always get the numbers mixed up. But it's interesting how our minds go to the thought of how could we not love it, or how, because when I know you don't have grandchildren yet, but for me, like, I have a lot of grandchildren. Um, and they're not I didn't obviously give birth to them, but I love them with such a different compassionate feeling of like empathy and love and just so much more. And it's just a different kind of love. And so I can relate to what your husband said. And I love that we have the connection of that date, of that time frame as well. And so you got the girls and wow, two,
2.
two at once. So you were fully committed right then and there, right?
Well, I didn't know any different, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, so we learned how to do 2, and so then when a single came along, like, he was a breeze, but, yeah, and thinking back now, we didn't get much like, they didn't give us a lot of information on, like, withdrawal symptoms or any kind of extra, help or support for
Yeah.
them, and thinking back, they did have pretty severe withdrawal symptoms, and, they had trouble feeding and eating, and I didn't know that there were options to, um, nurse
Uh-huh.
when you hadn't been pregnant, and so that was another thing that I always felt like not as a failure as a mother, but, I had the same feelings that you did, that I wanted to
Yeah.
create that bond, and I never got to do that,
Yeah.
so but
Well, and honestly, for me, it was just the Lord had put like, and obviously no judgment towards anyone. Like my first son that we adopted, he was 20 months old, or 22 months old. So, there wasn't an option for nursing him. And it wasn't, it didn't give like the youngest 2 that I was able to nurse that we adopted, it didn't give them full, like, nourishment. We had to supplement a lot, but I was just thinking that our son, that was the second one that we adopted, he was also addicted to cocaine. We got the youngest 2 from at birth. He was addicted to cocaine, and so I was just wondering about some of the withdrawal symptoms that you guys saw in your girls, because for him, like, he was a preemie, so he weighed about 5'2", I think, so he was a little bit bigger than the girls. Um, but he cried a lot, a lot, a lot. I mean, a lot. So I don't know what, and he, um wouldn't he nursed, and that gave him the bond, but yet it didn't satisfy him, so we did have to supplement more. But I just remember thinking, "Oh my goodness, like, I am married, I'm stable, I'm financially in a good place, I have a lot of help, and this is a lot, having a baby
yeah,
that cried 24/7." So what about your girls, like,
the
being
girls
addicted to
yeah.
cocaine?
One cried more than the other, and, the same one that cried a lot, she did not sleep ever. Like, she just didn't sleep, probably because she was crying all the time.
Yeah.
Um, she also had more trouble with different formulas, like, we had to change formula after formula after formula, everything bothered her stomach, like, her, almost like she I guess, kinda colicky because her stomach would get, like, rock hard, and she
Mm,
would just cry and cry and cry, but they couldn't get the suckle motion, so we had to, like, physically move their chins to
okay.
get them to learn how to suck,
Uh-huh.
and so it took a long time. So and we had them on a very strict schedule, and so by the time that you would feed and burp and change the one, and then because we would feed them separate so that if somebody was there by themselves, then they could do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
But once you would feed and change and burp and her and get her down, then you were having to feed the other one, and then that took so long that by the time you got finished feeding that one, it was time for the other one to eat again. So I mean, it was just like a constant cycle of feeding, burping, changing, and nobody was sleeping.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot.
Well, I know for our son, we had to end up using goat's milk. That was
Mm.
the only thing that his tummy could tolerate, and I don't know why he doesn't have any kind of aversion to milk or dairy or anything like that as he's grown up, but his little stomach, and I don't know if that had anything to do with, the drugs that were in his system when he, came into this world or not, but it
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm sure it had some sort of, like I said, it was so long ago. I mean, they're 22 and he's older too, but we had just the powdered formula, and there
Yeah,
were all these different kinds, and so we just tried different ones until we found one that worked. But
yeah.
as they got older, we found that so Dory had all the trouble in the beginning with the not sleeping and all, and the trouble with her tummy, and then Danny, as they got older, she started to have trouble in school. So we found out, I at first thought she was dyslexic because she was having so much trouble in school, but I
Mhm.
did have her tested, and she had definite reading and comprehension delays and short term memory problems. And then with a little more research, I found out that cocaine does have effect on short term memory and that kind of thing. So she struggled all through school,
Mhm.
which was one of the reasons why we decided to homeschool later down the road,
Yeah,
because she was just always behind, could
mhm,
not standardize test. It was so hard for her. And she would get so stressed out, which then caused high anxiety. And then Dory actually ended up having to have a cyst removed from her throat when she was 2. And she's always been, I used to call her the run of the litter, which which I'm not sure that she appreciated that, but she was always just a little more sickly
uh-huh,
than Danny was. Like, every time they got their shots, she would always be sick and Danny would be fine. But Dory didn't have as much trouble in school. So they both had their strengths and their
yeah,
challenges along the way. Um, but and I was trying to, we also thought that Danny might have had some sight problems, like some vision problems at one time, and then had her vision checked and it was fine.
yeah,
Um, but oh, that's what I was going to say. When they were in, I think it was second grade, they were going to go into second grade. They were fighting a lot. And so we had this conversation with them and said, listen, if y'all continue to fight, then we're going to put you in separate classes for this coming school year. And so they continued to fight. And so we decided to separate them and put them in different classes. We had gone on a family vacation, camping, and like, because school was starting the next week. And I looked at Dory. She's the one that's usually more sickly. And I was like, her skin is a funny color and her eyes were yellow.
oh,
Yeah, and so she was jaundice, like
uh-huh, yeah,
very, very apparently jaundice. And so we called the pediatrician, and of course, the first thing he throws out is like hepatitis, and so I'm freaking out, and
panic, yeah,
yeah, I don't know what to do. And so we take her to the hospital, and they start running tests, and then they decide to send her to Orlando to a more specialized pediatric hospital. And we were there for like at least a week, maybe 4 days. Maybe we were there for 4 days. They did every test under the sun on her and could not really find any cause
huh,
except for the separation of the twins.
oh,
And so it was almost like her organs shut down, because her anxiety got so high about being separated from her sister that her system like couldn't handle it, because they never found anything else wrong with her. And we had trouble with her all year long,
huh,
not wanting to go into school and like Spider-Manning on the inside of my husband's truck. like him like physically trying to pull her out, and it was just it was a lot.
Well, it's making me think about like when someone's been married for a long time and then their spouse dies and the other spouse goes downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard that so many times, and I can 100% see where that would be, you know, that makes total sense, I guess. I don't know what else to say, but that makes total sense that she would feel that way. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that one kind of felt that way and the other you didn't see signs of that.
No, well, so just in general, like their personalities, Danny is very easygoing.
Mhm.
Just kind of more go with the flow. Dory's my one that's always listening to what everybody else is saying, and she's observing, and but she doesn't always verbalize, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so just I think they're different personalities, but through the years, I have sort of seen signs also of like feelings of abandonment.
Okay.
And now that they're older, I've tried to talk with them a little more about that, but I think that that was probably, a lot of what was going on when we were talking
Yeah.
about separating them.
Uh-huh.
And they do have, they do still struggle with anxiety now that they're older. We're working on it and they're getting better, but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a thing.
And so tell us, okay, how old were the girls when you got your third baby?
The girls were 5. No, they
Okay.
had to been 4, about to turn 5. Because he was born in September and they would have turned 5 in December of that year.
Okay.
And they were the cutest, like, you know what I mean? Because we've always been very open that they are adopted, and
Uh-huh.
even though that their adoption was closed, because of the drugs, and they have multiple siblings out there in the world somewhere that we've never met.
Okay.
But their mother had been, they were number 9 and 10, and she didn't have custody of any of her kids.
Yeah.
So we've always been very open with them about the adoption. And so when we told them that, because when we lost our third baby, which was a baby boy, we did bring the girls in to hold him and to talk about it. And, they were in the hospital with us. And, I just, they knew that I was pregnant. And you know what I mean? I didn't want to go
Yeah.
into the hospital and been pregnant and then come back and like we never discussed it. I wanted
Right.
them to have
Right.
closure
Yeah.
about the whole thing. Um, and so we had, them come in and see him and hold him and talk to them as much as a 4-year-old can understand that. And so then when we started talking about adopting our son, um, they went with us. Like the whole family went, and
Yeah.
we all stayed in a house. He was born in Tennessee, and so we all stayed in a house over there, and they got to meet the biological mom, and then, of course, when he was born, they were like little mamas and taking care of him. And they still mama him now. They take him to school and pick him up for me every day, and they make his breakfast, and they, make sure he cleans his room. And yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes they mama him more than I do. So
My older kids were the same way, especially my daughter. She was very much like that with the boys, just like they were like her own life-size baby dolls,
yes, yeah,
which when they came into the family. So there's about, I guess, right about 5 years difference between them. And so they loved him. They pulled him in, and there was never any no differentiation. Do you feel like it was just like we're just bringing another baby in?
no, yeah, he was their brother. Like that's all they
Yeah.
knew. We said, we're gonna have a new baby brother, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, there's never been my husband and I have always felt like they were our children. Even going
Because
back,
they are
exactly.
100%.
Exactly. They were meant to be ours. That was God's plan all along. And not that I didn't question God's plan many
Yeah.
times, because, why did I have to go through so much heartache and so much pain and so much loss? But they needed us and we needed them. And it's
Yeah.
been a beautiful, you know, not that we haven't had our struggles,
Yeah.
Every family has their struggles, but,
Exactly. Yeah. So were
um,
your first 2 that you lost, were they girls?
yes.
So I was making the connection here. It takes me a minute sometimes, but I finally make the connections that you adopted 2 girls and then a boy, and that's exactly how you lost yours. You lost 2 girls and you lost a boy. And I just think it's a beautiful picture of how the Lord is so ever present. And I remember you saying at the beginning, you were like, well, surely God wouldn't do this to me again. And yet we look at it now, and just like what you just said, like we needed them as much as they needed us. And that's something that my husband and I both have said over the years, is that it's not just that these kids needed a home, it's that we needed them in our life, and the same for you guys. And had I gotten pregnant after my husband had his vasectomy reversal for the second time, I mean, this is a real man's man who goes and does it, gets a reversal twice. And we're thinking we're just going to get pregnant. We didn't. If we had gotten pregnant, or if I had gotten pregnant, um, we wouldn't have these 3 boys. And even though you and your husband went through a lot of heartache and pain, which I can't imagine, my friend, I have not experienced that. And I don't know the pain of what you went through, but the beauty and the joy on the other side of that, by the Lord giving you these beautiful 3 children, is a miracle.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a miracle, and I say that to my husband all the time. I'm like, because for one thing, a lot of people are never blessed to adopt a baby.
Yeah.
Because like you said, your one son was 22 months old when he came. Like that's how a lot of people come into adoption, even in foster care and all those
Yeah.
kinds. Because I've had a lot of friends um, that have adopted through foster care, and then there's a lot of kids that I treated within my occupational therapy practice that were in the foster care system, and so I was treating them, but I was working with the foster care parents,
Yeah.
and um, a lot of people don't ever get a baby.
Yeah.
Like you got
Right.
3. I
Yeah.
mean, that just you know what I mean? That just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. And so I always try to tell him how blessed because when when I got pregnant with our son and then he passed away, my husband, he's like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Like this is it. We've have the girls. We're
Yeah.
good. We don't. It's kind of like I think he was kind of like we were pushing, kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we'd already been blessed and they were asking for more. And then our son that we adopted literally fell into our lap, which is a whole nother miracle. My mom is a nurse and she was in the operating room and talking to somebody that she works with who had a let me think about this. Her brother that lived in a different state, um, her brother's wife worked with the girl who was pregnant
Hmm.
and actively looking for someone to take her baby. She could not find anybody to take the baby. She was 6 months pregnant, and I our due dates ended up to be like our due dates ended up to be like 2 weeks apart. But my son was born early, and so then Judson, but they were both supposed to be born in September. It was
Hmm.
just crazy the timeline because if I had not gotten pregnant when I had, and we hadn't lost the boy when we had, we never would have found Judson. We would never have
Yeah.
been looking. Um,
Right.
so like I said, God orchestrated all of that as well. So
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I'm so excited to be able to share with our audience today about these amazing kids that you have adopted. And how old are they now?
the girls are going to be 22 in December, and Judson just turned 17.
Okay. So our youngest is 17 as well. And then we have a 20-year-old and then 23. Yes, they're all 3 years apart. I have to think about it. I mean, you have a house full of kids. You got to think about I have to think about how old I'm going to be myself. And it's fine if I forget that, but I don't want to forget about my kids, right? So tell our audience today, what has been the biggest blessing that you guys have experienced through adoption? And what would you tell someone else out there who's considering it, or maybe they're feeling like, I don't know if this is for me or not?
They really have been the biggest blessing in our lives. And I remember when, after we adopted the girls and they did, we did a home study in the beginning. And then maybe like 3 years later, they came back and did
Uh-huh.
another home study just to make sure that everything was,
You hadn't gone off the rails.
exactly, yeah. And I remember them asking, like, "What is one of the biggest blessings that you've experienced out of this?" And I said, "The laughter." Like, our home is filled with laughter, and
Love
for such
that.
a long time, I didn't think that I was ever gonna be able to laugh again.
Yeah.
Like, I was so broken and, so depressed and felt guilty about laughing because my children had passed away. And Judson, it was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4, and so he set me on a whole new career path. He is why I got my master's degree in occupational therapy, and so, that's completely changed my life too, to look at everybody in a more holistic
Yeah.
way. So that's why I love the profession of occupational therapy. So yeah, he completely changed my whole career.
Wow. Well, when the Lord puts people or situations in our path, that's exactly what happens. Like, we don't expect it. And I think if we could, like, not that I believe in this, but if we could look into a crystal ball and see what's coming down the pipe, we would be like, no way. I'm not, like, I do this all the time. I'm not prepared for that. I can't do that. Don't show me. And if he would have told me, um, early on when I got pregnant at 19, hey, you're going to have 4 biological kids and you're going to adopt kids and blah, blah, blah. I would have been like, I didn't sign up for that. No, hard pass.
Right.
But thank goodness he doesn't show us that ahead of time. And you know, this is one thing that people say, the Lord doesn't give us more than we can handle. And I do not believe that. I believe the Lord does give us more than we can handle because that's when we rely on him.
Yes.
That's the only way that we rely on him is when we're like, I cannot do this by myself.
Yeah, there's no way I ever would have made it through any of this without Jesus.
Yeah.
So yes, I thank him every day.
Yes, me too. Okay. So I have one more question for you. I mean, I always say one more, but here's the one that's on the top of my mind right now. I want you to tell us about Eat Your Feelings. I see it in the background there. And of course, I know it because I have 3 copies of it. Um, well, I have 2 and I gave one away. But tell us a little bit about what inspired that. I know you talk about, your kids and all the things, but can you just give us a little synopsis on that?
So it is the story. It's the story of our life. So all the kids' stories, like everybody got their own little chapter in there. The story of me and my husband meeting and our marriage life is in there. But it really starts with my childhood and my father, who was verbally abusive. And I think that's one of the reasons why I always wanted to be a mother. I wanted to change the way I didn't want to parent the way that I had been parented.
Mhm.
And I was able to forgive my dad before he passed away, but I always just had that love in my heart for children and knew that how I grew up wasn't how it had to be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So our story and then the grief and the depression and the anxiety that came from my trauma is I realized that instead of moving through what I had been through, I was eating my feelings instead. So that's why I
Okay.
titled it Eat Your Feelings. But there's
Mhm.
also tools and things that I used in my life to overcome all the tragedy that I've been through and to turn those into beautiful things.
Yeah.
And so that's really the message that I want people to glean from the book is that you can go through hard things, but there is joy and Jesus is a big part of that. And so he is in the book as well.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I'm so excited for you about that. And now you have launched your own publishing company. That's amazing.
Well, I want to help other women tell their story. And
Yeah.
especially when you have stories like mine that can be kind of heavy, there's a lot of healing that goes into the book writing process. And so I just want to be a safe space for other women who want to tell their story and help other people.
Yeah. And I believe I mean, that's amazing. It's so beautiful. And I believe that that is another part of why the Lord connected us because like I say all the time when I'm interviewing and when I'm talking to people about the podcast, is that if it just impacts one person and the impact that it's already had in just a few months by talking about the series on teenage motherhood and now going into adoption and sharing my love story with my husband and just different things, it's just who is the Lord going to share the story with? Who is going to be impacted by it? And the truth is that people are going to be impacted by this podcast that you're on, this episode, because of the story that you're telling, or someone that you know is going to be connected with me because of the story that we're telling here. And I think that's such a beautiful thing about collaboration and community. And
Yes.
I'm just so thankful that the Lord chose to cross our paths and keep us not only in community through the masterminds that we've been doing, or the amazing time that we had when we were in Hawaii. Oh my gosh, could we recreate that, please?
Yeah.
But also just having a friendship. Like, we talk on the phone. It's not like we're just like, oh, we're just doing this together, but we actually are friends. And
Yes.
so I love that.
I love you, and I just love what you're doing. I'm so proud of you for starting the podcast, and I love that you're sort of doing themes, and so you're doing like little series, and they're very impactful. I've really enjoyed all the episodes that I've listened to.
Oh, thank you, friend. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I know that our audience is going to glean so much from your wisdom, from all of the things that you've gone through. Even hearing you talk about, the trauma that you've gone through, the things that you and your husband dealt with when you were going through that, into the adoption, then getting it all written out on paper. I mean, that's a journey. Like, I haven't done it. I know we've kind of talked about that in the past, but I'm really proud of you for doing that. I think it's a big step. So look forward to hearing you speak on more platforms and spending more time with you. And I just appreciate your friendship. So thank you so much for being my guest today, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, friends, if this, no, there's no if to it. Like, I know that someone listening today is feeling that nudge. You're feeling like, this is really impactful for me, or this is really going to impact my friend XYZ, whomever that might be. Share this podcast with them, because you never know the impact, the ripple effect that it could have for someone else. And as always, please give me a 5-star rating, leave a written review, and check out the show notes below, because I'm going to put all of Christina's information there. If you want to connect with her, you want to get her book. I know you're going to want to get that book. You can get it on Amazon. Please, please do that. All right, guys, until next time, we'll see you the next time on the Angie Amberzetti Show. Thanks so much. Bye.
That's it for today, friends. Thanks for tuning in with me today. I hope today's episode stirred your soul, sparked your faith, and reminded you that your story is far from over. Keep walking in freedom. Keep showing up bold, and never forget, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Be sure to leave a review, subscribe, or share this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it as well. Until next time, keep letting her out to play, because the world needs your fire.